Hello everybody and welcome to this week's garage video for the Bajaboard G4. Today we are going to be removing the steering knuckles. So these are some of the tools that you're going to need for today. I have a 12mm socket for the torque wrench. We will also be using a 13mm standard wrench. You will see why later in the video. Also don't have it here right now, but you will be also using a 12mm standard wrench, and just like with the 13, there is a reason why I will be using that later in the video. And then for the Allen key torque wrench sockets, we will be using a 4mm and a 5mm. The first thing we're going to do is remove this bolt from the bottom knuckle. It is exactly the same procedure as if you were removing the bolts from the shocks. When you are stripping your board down, this is a good time to check all your nuts and bolts. Make sure none of them are stripped or need to be replaced in some way. As you can see with this one, we do need to replace this when we're putting it back together. When removing the bottom bolt here for the knuckle, there are going to be these two metal cones that help support the bottom knuckle with the steering joint and the board itself. So then you're going to remove the hex piece that supports the tire, and you're going to remove that metal rod that keeps everything in place there. And then you can remove what I call the axle bolt for the entire knuckle. You also have a washer towards the tire. It's going to be between that little metal rod piece and the first bearing of the steering knuckle. Now we're going to remove the nut that holds the steering knuckle to the top suspension arm. This is when you're going to use that 13mm socket. As you can see, it's the only thing that will fit in that little space. This one also is the only one that doesn't have any Loctite on it. As you can see, there is a rubber sealant that's on the nut that keeps all that in place. Then after I did that, I'm going to use the 5mm Allen key socket and remove the top. This one isn't too difficult. You could pretty much do this by hand. So this is when things get a little difficult. This is where you're going to use that standard 12mm wrench. It is the only thing that's going to be able to fit in there. I decided to do all this stuff by hand. I would say do that if possible. If it is no way that you're going to be able to get that off of there or loosen it at least a little bit, you can use a vise. I have done that before. You just have to be very careful when you are doing that, because you don't want to tighten that vise so much that you crack the steering knuckle or anything. So just be careful if you are doing that. You could use like a towel, any kind of cushioning to try and keep that in place as much as possible so you can get that loosened up in there. I ended up putting the one bolt back into the bottom knuckle then, and I was able to crank some of those loose in that way. So I think that's the most effective. But as you can see here, there are two washers that go underneath that nut that you removed there. So just be careful that you don't lose those. So now we're just going to show the rear procedure of doing it. It's pretty much going to be the same. The only thing that's different is that you have the drive shaft attached to the axle rod there. So I'm just going to show this here so you can see how that's all done. Once you get that bottom bolt off for the knuckle, you're going to have to get some cutters to snap off the zip ties that you have on both sides of the rubber caps of the drive shaft. I did forget to mention earlier, just like with that bottom bolt that had those two metal cones, you're also going to have one on that top bolt of the knuckle as well. So if you're going to be putting the belt drive system back together, you can clean this stuff later, but you are going to clean all that grease off of there and then reapply new grease on there when you're putting it all back together. So these are all the parts that we just removed today. The steering knuckle is going to be the most time consuming and difficult. After this, everything should go pretty smoothly for you. I hope you all enjoyed the video today, and we will see you all next time. Take care, everyone.